Welcome to All Bodies on Bikes, the podcast, where all bodies are good bodies, all bikes are good bikes, and all rides are celebrated.
All Bodies on Bikes is a movement to create and foster a radically inclusive bike community. So join your hosts, I'm Ellen,
And I'm Marley.
as we explore the complexities of the biking world. Help us break down barriers and create the world that we want to see.
And don't forget that all bodies really means all bodies, not just larger bodies, but bodies of all sizes,
Ages,
races,
abilities,
genders,
sexualities.
and beyond. Come along for the ride. Hi friends, Marley Blonsky here, Executive Director of All Bodies on Bikes and your podcast co-host. I've got some really exciting news for you. Our fall fundraiser for All Bodies on Bikes is officially live and we need your help. We're trying to raise $10,000 to keep growing this incredible community, making cycling accessible to everyone, no matter their size, shape, or experience level. Your support today will help us fund more inclusive events, offer more resources, and spread the message that all bodies truly belong on bikes. And as a special thank you, anyone who donates over $50 will get our custom All Bodies on Bikes X Gooder sunglasses, which are really fun. They're named the hottest thing on two wheels. Trust me, you don't want to miss out on these incredible sunglasses. So head on over to allbodiesonbikes.com to donate and please share with your friends. Let's ride together and make this movement bigger and better than ever. Hi, friends.
Hey, friend. We're sitting in a live special edition election podcast from my couch.
Yeah, we don't typically live in the same place. I, for the time being, am in Arkansas.
Yep, I know. You have a lot of big ideas about what you're doing with your life. And it may or may not involve Arkansas or most of this country. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that it's not going to involve Arkansas for much longer.
Okay.
But I don't know where it's going to be. I think I'm going to go nomadic, which is going to be really interesting.
You've been saying that on your Instagram page, which
I know.
is very exciting for me.
At this point, it's public.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't know where that means yet.
It feels like when Ellen Noble said, I'm coming out of retirement, but it doesn't mean anything yet.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Would that have anything to do with the election?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the US is going to be challenging for a while, but it would be. I'm just feeling lonely down there. The biking is absolutely incredible, but I haven't found my people. I've made some really good friends and I love them dearly, but especially coming from Seattle, I want weirdos. I want queers. I want Jewish people. I want just people of color. I want just more diversity. And Bentonville is like the Stepford Wives.
It ain't it.
No. And I just don't fit in.
Yeah.
Which is hard. It's really hard.
It is. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
It gets to be exhausting.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
We're here to talk a little bit about the election and how we see this affecting the next 4 years, both of All Bodies on Bikes and culture and cycling and lots of things. So we just had an election.
Yeah.
The next president will be Republican.
Can you even call him that? I don't want to get this. I guess to start off, this is not going to be a super political episode. So if you turn this on, you're like, dang it, I came here to hear Marley and Ellen talk about bikes and uplifting things.
Maybe we start over.
We have that for you. We need to start over.
Okay.
Yeah. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about some of the wins because there were some really good wins this cycle, but also just a real conversation. I guess to start this out, the most important thing is All Bodies on Bikes is not changing.
No.
We are rooted in community. That is where we started and that is where we will continue. And we are unequivocal in that we are unwavering in our commitment to building that community, to supporting and cultivating inclusive spaces. And that's for everybody, transgender people, migrants, immigrants, undocumented people. That is not something that is relevant to us. And other marginalized people. This is really coming together in community is the core of All Bodies on Bikes. And that's not going to change. We're here for you. And we want you to show up fully as yourself, every facet of who you are. And a lot of things I've been reading online this past week has been about the importance of community going forward.
Yeah.
And so we're just here to say, to start out, All Bodies on Bikes will continue to do this work.
Yeah.
Which gives me a lot of hope.
I agree. That's a lot of what I'm anchoring into post-election is, and I think this is true of almost any election, because at this point in time, about half the country is not going to like the outcome, no matter what it is. And so feeling that there is always going to be grief in losing, quote unquote losing. And so feeling like one of the things you can do is anchoring into your capital C community and figuring out what that is and how you can grow that and bring us closer together going forward, no matter who you vote for.
Yeah. That being said, it's been a week.
It's been a
It's
week.
it's been a little bit over a week at this point. I actually had surgery on election day,
Okay.
so I was blissfully
Yeah. Were you put completely under?
I
I
was
might do that for 2028.
I should have been put under the day after. But it was on Tuesday when I had my knee surgery. I had my meniscus scoped out, and recovery is going really well.
Good.
But I've really been focused on that, which has been a nice distraction,
Mhm.
but it also has left me feeling disconnected a little bit.
Mhm.
How are you doing?
I have been better. I have been better. It's the election didn't go. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone listening. The election did not go the way I would have preferred it to go. And it feels very devastating. I do have a ton of privilege that I will acknowledge, and that I, as my own individual self and my family, we will make it to the other side of the next 4 years. And I get very concerned about people who don't look like me and people who don't identify the same way that I do, aren't in the same economic bracket as I am. And so that weighs on me really heavily in a lot of ways. But like the day after, I think I was borderline comatose
Yep.
and took a lot of time to think of what I wanted to do next. I'm not a person, at least in this situation, I am not a person who is ready for the Pollyanna. We're gonna like, here's the silver lining,
Yeah.
especially the day after. I was not ready for that. But I am a person who I will need to take action to feel like I'm more in control of the situation. And so I just did a lot of thinking on what that is and landed on community. Like
Mm,
what I'm trying to build in Kansas City with Family Bike Ride, with all of the advocacy work and all the ways I'm involved here is ultimately about building that community. So I'm grateful to be involved with All Bodies on Bikes in this way and knowing that I can this is a safe space. This is somewhere that is radically inclusive and vocally inclusive.
yeah.
So I think I am seeing the way forward. I'm starting to see that path laid out.
Good, good. Yeah, and if anything, we learned a lot during COVID about the healing power of the outdoors and nature.
Yeah.
And so we can always go for a bike ride,
Yeah.
no matter how tumultuous things get or how dumb the cabinet turns out to be.
Can I say that I've heard it called a drunk drawer, not a
Oh,
cabinet?
wait, a junk drawer
A
or a drunk drawer?
junk with a J,
Okay.
but both might apply.
Yeah,
Both might apply. And
yeah.
I think with the cabinet, I think a lot of people are feeling the uncertainty of the situation that we're going into.
But
Like,
I would put myself in that bucket.
yeah. So whether, and again, this is going to be true of any administration change, right? People are going to flip over to the other administration. What does this mean? What does this look like for bikes right now? We're losing Mayor Pete, who's in charge of transportation right now.
We love Mayor Pete.
We love Mayor Pete. He's done a great job. Whether or not he's had a background in transportation before that, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But but to be fair though, as well as transportation, he is a gay man. He is part of what we would consider our All Bodies on Bikes community. Mayor Pete, if you want to hang on a bike ride, let us know.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're gonna have some free time coming up. But what does the future of bikes and transportation look like? We can't tell the future. We are not clairvoyant, but we have some indications.
Yeah. And so there were some really big wins for transportation, specifically for biking in this election. Before we get to that, though, there were some other big wins.
Okay.
So the first, and please correct me if I say this incorrectly, but the first openly transgender person was elected to Congress.
Yes,
Which
Sarah
is
McBride.
it's a huge step.
Huge.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an interesting collision of the country that we had. So I live in Missouri. Approved, we put abortion access in the Constitution and then voted Republican down ballot in the same year as the first openly transgender person is now in Congress.
Yeah.
And so it's just so wildly interesting to me that these competing ideals are going to be in Congress at the same time. I think it's just very illustrative of what's happening.
Yeah. And obviously, neither of us are political pundits, but
No.
I've been listening to a lot of it. And there's so much talk about the economy and why people voted one way versus the other. And they didn't vote all one ticket. But it's so fascinating.
It's really fascinating. And I think that again, just that is it a dichotomy?
Or juxtaposition?
Juxtaposition.
Okay.
I like that better, of having those two things exist in the same election is is really interesting to me in that coming together as a community idea.
Mhm.
So where at the way these elections shook out, two wildly polarized ideals are coming together in the same room, under the same roof to
Yeah.
make decisions together.
Hopefully they can come together and make some decisions.
They have to interact. I guess they don't have to interact. There's 535 people in Congress,
Right.
but they're still going to be around each other.
Yeah.
They will have to feign listening. Is that even true anymore? I guess you can put whatever you want if you're sitting in the stands, but
Yeah.
they are literally and figuratively under the same roof.
Yes. And hopefully we can find some common understanding and some common ground
Yeah.
and work together for clearly there's a lot of folks who are struggling. And I think that's why the vote turned out the way that it did, because they saw hope in whatever was being offered. And hopefully they can come together and maybe, and this is where I turned into a Pollyanna of, oh, it won't be that bad. And then I
Mhm.
remember back to 2016 and I think is going to be worse than any of us imagine.
I think so. I agree, but and as much as I just said, I'm not ready for the silver lining yet. The other thing that I think I've acknowledged is progress is not linear.
Yeah.
That is, we have gotten through this literally the same person at the head of, I don't know that I want to say in charge of,
Yeah.
at the head of this administration has been at the head before there was, as far as progressive policies were undone. And so we've two steps forward, one step back. In the grand scheme of progress, it could be that you only get one step forward, two steps back, but you might still, like, over the course of the last, do we want to say 60 years? If Ruby Bridges turned 70 this year,
I learned she has an Instagram.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot about her on Instagram, but I didn't know she had her own.
She has her own Instagram.
So I feel like there's that. Ruby Bridges is 70. This is all like not in my I'm not 70. but yeah, my parents still like my mother-in-law is. And so since she's been alive is a lot of where this progress to me. I think of the difference there.
Yeah.
The more macro you can get, the better. Obviously, there's tons of progress still left to be made. But that's the thing that I anchor in when I think of the fact that we've got 4 years of this administration, which is it's gonna happen.
It's happening.
It's happening.
Whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
But yeah. Should we talk about some of the wins that happened specifically in transportation?
I would
And
love that.
neither of us are transportation wonks, both advocates.
I think I'm adjacent to being a
I
wonk.
think you're very close.
I'm really close.
Yeah, I think I used to be, and then I've moved away from that, and I would love to get back into it.
I wonder what should I call myself if it's not a wonk?
I think you should take on the wonk name.
That's okay.
We said that word too much, and now it sounds weird. Anyway, we got all of this from People for Bikes. So
Yeah.
if you're not familiar with People for Bikes, they're an incredible organization that does advocacy. What's the word? I almost said litigating, but they don't litigate.
Lobby.
Lobbying on Capitol Hill in favor of active transportation.
Yeah.
And so they put together this, we'll put a link to it so y'all can read, because we're only going to have a couple of highlights, but there were some really big wins. Broad strokes in this election, there was 27.4 billion with a B, billion
Dollars.
that was approved nationwide in this election.
Yeah, for transportation stuff.
Yes, for active transportation. And a lot of that will trickle down to biking, walking,
Yeah.
connected communities. You can't say it's all for biking because a lot of it is built into.
It's very holistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of public transportation, first mile, last mile stuff. So it's cool. They had a map that is what I think caught both of our eyes,
Mhm.
where they highlighted each state and how much money each state approved. And these are typically like multi-year, multi-decade in some cases programs that have been approved, but still 27.4 billion is nothing to shake a stick at.
Yeah.
So we wanted to, there's a couple of things that are not surprises. So California had $11 billion approved.
Nope, sorry, yes. Specifically,
Yes.
there was 2 billion for Proposition 4, which supports the construction, maintenance, and improvement of recreation and active transportation trails.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Cool.
specifically to combat the effects of climate change.
Aha.
So that's really cool there.
That is cool.
Yeah. Washington, where I used to live, again, not surprising that they voted in favor of this.
Yeah.
But basically, they rejected a measure that will ensure that funds keep flowing for this program called the Move Ahead Washington Package, which provides 1.3 billion for bike and ped projects, which is really cool.
And they rejected the measure to protect funds.
It's really complicated.
So this is just like a wording thing.
It's a wording
Okay.
thing. Yeah.
But-
So basically, there's a cap and trade scheme in Washington
Okay.
for climate change stuff. And there was an initiative to get rid of that. And the
Okay.
cap and trade scheme is what is funding the Move Ahead Washington package.
Okay.
And so they voted to protect that funding,
Okay. Okay.
which is really awesome. Good job, voters, because that's confusing.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the that's how ballots work.
Exactly.
But yeah. So I wanted to talk about a couple of Midwestern things. Would you have expect how much money do you think Tennessee got? I know that
I
you'll
know
speak
the
because we've
answer,
talked about it.
but I wouldn't think of Tennessee as being an active transportation state.
Yeah.
It doesn't show up on all the radars, even though I know there's lots of folks in Memphis and Nashville doing good work. It just hasn't been on my radar.
Yeah. And so Nashville specifically for passed an ordinance, they passed a tax, like a quarter cent sales tax, and they're going to get, I think it's $3 billion to implement their public transportation, which includes a whole bunch of bike and ped stuff.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
And then the other one we wanted to highlight was Ohio,
Yeah.
which got $6 billion.
6 billion for
Six
Ohio.
6 billion for Ohio, holistic, like for the full package. And then a third of that is almost specifically for bikes.
Yeah. And the plans, which is really cool, include building 500 miles of new bike paths, multi use trails, and sidewalks with 150 miles planned in the next 5 years.
That's pretty great.
Yeah. 30 miles a year.
Yeah, 30 miles a year is great.
Yeah. If I got 30, I live in Bentonville, so we can't use that as a comparison. But when I
Right.
lived in Seattle, if we were getting 30 miles of new trail across Washington, like that would be revolutionary for so
Yeah.
many people.
Same here. Yeah. In Missouri specifically, that would be awesome. I guess I immediately think of Kansas City, the city where I live. If that would be, that would easily stretch like a north south corridor.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing to remember is even a mile long segment
Mhm.
is going to positively impact so many people.
Yeah.
And I think that's a way to think about all of these big things that are happening with this election is they're going to impact real people,
Yeah.
both positively and negatively.
And a lot of times it's the people who are marginalized in some way
Mhm.
who are going to best use some of this protected infrastructure specifically. So if we're, especially if there's an effort to focus on neighborhoods that are have dangerous streets, or if we can do traffic calming, if it's high pedestrian networks that have that need the protected infrastructure, that often most impacts a vulnerable
Well,
population.
yeah.
Kind of pedestrians are like inherently the most vulnerable, but frequently a pedestrian is a pedestrian and for a reason,
Yeah.
especially in a spot like Ohio.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So
So there is good news.
there is good news. And I think to wrap it up and bring it back, community, capital C community,
Yeah.
is really what's going to get us through this next 4 years. But who knows what's to come after that. But I've been thinking a lot about community because my threads is if you're not on threads and you're not following me, you should follow me on threads because I have some thoughts there sometimes.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I'm not on
You're
threads.
not on threads. I used to be I was a very early adopter of
Okay.
Twitter. And so it's
Mm.
been a place that I've used like online community square, I guess, community forum
Yeah.
has been a big part of my digital life for a long time. So the transition to threads has been good. But there's a lot of folks talking about building community there. And it's just made me think about what is a community and making sure that we are truly building networks of support. I think the word community, I'm going to get on a soapbox here. I think it gets painted with a broad stroke
Mhm.
of this community, that community. But I would argue that a community is a very specific thing. It's a group of people that care about each other's well being. And that could be centered around a common interest, that could be centered around a place of worship, something like that. But
Mhm.
I think about a bike ride or a group ride.
Sure.
We've all been on group rides that don't feel like a community. You're all there because you have a shared interest and we're going to ride bikes together. And then you've been on rides where it does feel like a community, where you're taking care of each other, you're waiting for each other, you're checking on each other's well being. And I would urge us all to be building that second model where we're checking on each other, we're gathering for dinners, coffee.
Checking in on each other.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little things, like little text messages. I loved after the election, I got several people from various walks of life. I know we were in the same camp, like just checking in. That can go so long, even just in like friendships in general.
Yeah.
If I can get on my little soapbox, like the how you doing text, even if there's not a administration shift in your life, is really powerful.
Yeah. That's kept me going through these last 3 years in Arkansas of just people checking in on me and saying, "Hey, how you doing, Marley? Like,
Yeah.
you okay?" And not most of the time. Oh, some of the time I have not been okay. And that
Yeah.
really has been what's kept me going.
Cool.
I don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty. Tariffs. Who knows what's happening with that?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to talk a little? I think you're closer to this. So, can you talk a little bit about how you could see that impacting the bike world?
Yeah. So a lot of bikes are manufactured overseas, especially the big name brands, Giant, Cannondale. A lot of those have manufacturing facilities overseas. And so if these tariffs are imposed, it's likely, and again, not an economist, but likely it's the end consumer who usually ends up paying more because of those tariffs. So there's the potential that things could increase in cost. Manufacturing facilities might shift. If we're imposing tariffs on China, it's possible that factories will move to other places. I used to work in logistics, and a lot of that was happening. There was a big shift away from China into Vietnam. It's an interesting global perspective. But so that'll be something to keep an eye on there.
Yeah.
Definitely going to impact the bike industry, which is already undergoing a little bit of a still going a slump through COVID.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's lots of good podcasts about that, about the inventory and how everybody was buying bikes and then they overstocked and then glut of inventory. Anyway. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But the crux of it, All Bodies on Bikes, is not changing. We are here for you. If you're feeling alone, reach out to us, especially if you live in one of the places where our chapters are at, which we're launching 5 new chapters in 2025, early 2025, which we'll have more about that in future episodes. But we want you to know that we're here and we care about you.
We do. We care about you a lot.
Yeah.
So let us know. Reach out. We're on Instagram.
Yep.
Instagram is that the easiest way to get in touch?
Instagram's the easiest, yeah.
Maybe let's put up a box and be like, we just launched this episode and what did you think? And tell us how you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, so let us know. You can also always send us an email, podcast@allbodiesonbikes.com, and that goes directly to me and Ellen. So thanks for sticking with us. We know you don't tune into All Bodies on Bikes to hear about election stuff.
It felt monumentous.
Yeah, it felt really important.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we're chatting. I'm glad you're here on my couch.
Thanks.
It feels good. It feels like building. It's just 2 of us, but it counts towards community.
It definitely counts towards community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Good chatting with you, Marley.
Good chatting with you, Ellen, and be well, everybody, and we will talk to you soon.
This has been a super good Midwestern goodbye, by the way. Like, read the thing 17 times.
That's how it goes.
Bye.